In this section, Rita is demonstrating an intake interview. And of course, intake interviews are shaped by the client, by the interviewer, by the setting, and by just about every factor that you can imagine. In this particular intake example, the client, Michelle, comes in and has filled out a form, but it only identified in a general way that she was struggling with anxiety in her life. And so you should watch at the very beginning of this video clip at how quickly Michelle jumps into her specific problem, describes her symptoms, and then Rita does a nice job both exploring and sticking with the chief complaint, but also staying with the format or structure of an intake interview. Keep in mind that some clients will not jump so quickly into their presenting complaint. I remember back in the day, well, maybe just a few years ago when we were younger, that we might take 3 or 4 sessions just to deeply identify a presenting complaint and develop a problem formulation.
Okay, so let's watch the beginning of this work with Michelle. So Michelle, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And
I would like to start today by just checking in with you on what brought you in today for the counseling.
Okay. This feels a little bit weird. I've never gone to see a counselor before, so I'm not exactly sure how to start, but I had a couple of, I guess what they called panic attacks. I went to the hospital for one because I didn't know it was wrong, and I was kind of freaking out. So I went there. I thought there was something wrong with me, and they said that there wasn't anything physically wrong with me, but I was having some anxiety issues, so they said to come here to the clinic, and so I did.
Wow.
So I really don't know other than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you had a couple of those happen?
Yeah. The first one was the one that I went. Well, I had a couple littler ones before that, but the first big one was the one that I went to the hospital for because I just felt like my chest was hurting and I couldn't breathe, and I thought maybe, I don't know, I didn't know what to think. So I went there and they ran a battery test and blood pressure and all that kind of stuff, and so then they said that I was okay, but I should probably check in with a mental health person, and that kind of made me feel weird because I've never had anything like this happen before.
So it felt kind of like, uh-oh, they're telling me something's in my head, and you felt weird about it, but here you are.
Yeah.
Decided to go after it. So is it okay if I ask you a little bit about what led up to those experiences?
Sure. Well, a couple of them seemed like they came out of the blue, but I've been having some stress at school. I'm a second year at the university up here, so So you had a couple of those classroom-based sort of. Yeah. Well, the other one I was in like at a concert, like at a bar, and there was lots of people there, and I was kind of like right in the middle of the crowd, so it wasn't at school, but it was. Kind of seemed like when there was a lot of people, it made me
just that crowded feeling, and then
like I can't get out, and I need to get out, and I can't get out.
Okay, what's the first physical symptom or thought? Which comes first? And
usually it's the chest heaviness.
So right
like
here,
I can't breathe. And then just kind of it feels like I can't get out, and I need to. And then I get kind of freak myself out, I think, at that point.
What starts to go on in your head?
I think that I can't get out. I'm not going to be able to get out. I need to be able to get out. What happens if I can't get out?
Yeah.
And then it just sort of feeds on itself from there.
Yeah.
And I start breathing heavy, and my chest starts hurting more, and it just kind of gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I'm guessing at about that point you thought, okay, fine, I'll go see somebody.
I know. I kind of tried to play it off like, if the bad one doesn't happen again, then I can probably deal with the other ones. But yeah, I mean, I've never, like I said, I never talked to a counselor, so I wasn't really sure.
Wasn't your favorite idea?
Or not. But at this point, I was like, well, if it works, great.
Okay.
If not, then I guess I'm not any worse off than I was before. So.
Right. Okay. So I think what I'd like to do, if it's all right with you, is kind of go backwards for a few minutes. But I do want to note that we're pretty clear on what our goal would be in working together.
Yeah.
And that would be
no more panic.
No more panic.
Would be delightful.
Yeah. And we may not be able to go right to no more panic, but maybe an intermediate goal would be how to handle when that heaviness comes, when those thoughts start, how to handle that, and maybe in some way we gradually get control of it as sort of steps toward the ultimate goal of no more panic attacks. Does that seem okay?
Anything's better than what's going on now, I think. So I'm pretty much game for whatever.
You know, I do want to notice a couple things, though, and that is you've coped with some things that are pretty scary, and you had a lot of common sense, sort of got yourself out of the situation, you breathed, you walked, you gave yourself permission not to go back to class. And so I'm just noticing that you've got a lot of skills already.
Cool.
That we'll probably notice again. So John, it's a little bit startling when the client arrives and has already got a diagnosis and is ready to begin fixing the problem.
Absolutely. You can feel, I think, like you have a lot of pressure on you to jump immediately into fixing the problem. But I'm glad that instead you kept exploring the presenting complaint or the chief complaint, and then you went a little bit into other areas and really were building and gathering information that helped with establishing the beginning of a treatment plan. In particular, I liked the fact that you identified for the client, for Michelle, what was heaviness in her chest, and that seemed to be a trigger for her panic attacks.
Right, right. I did intentionally transition to history, but before I went there, I really had noticed some strengths in Michelle and wanted to reflect those before we went into history taking.
At the risk of complimenting you too much, I really did like the way that you focused on her strengths, and I liked the way you developed with her some intermediate goals rather than sort of feeding into the idea that the goal is to eliminate all panic attacks.
Right.
In fact, it can be very discouraging for clients if that's their only goal, and you helped her see that there might be some intermediate goals along the way.
Yeah. Well, I did explicitly foreshadow that shift, and then we did do some history taking, and it was important, I think, to signal that we're going to make that shift, especially in an intake interview, because clients don't know where things are going.
And you know, gathering at least a little information about personal history is important. I think it's important from the client's perspective, and there are many different ways of doing it, but clients often have a sense of continuing from the past to the present to the future. Now let's watch as Rita's intake interview with Michelle continues.
So let's do a little bit of background, you know. You can't go see a shrink without a little background.
Do I have to lay down on the couch?
Yeah, if you would, please.
All right, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
My dad was around till I was about 4, and then they divorced, and I didn't really have a lot of contact with my dad after that. My mom was a single mom and kind of took care of me. She was a nurse, and so she was working a lot, but she had somebody to watch me during the night, so she was there during the day a lot, but sometimes she had to sleep, and but a lot of times she was there, especially after I went to school. Then she'd sleep while I was at school and be up when I was up, and then after she put me to bed, she'd go to work late night. So
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty hardworking mom.
yeah, she was very hardworking and very supportive, and
Is she still alive?
she is. Yeah,
How's your relationship these days?
it's good. She's like I said, very supportive and has always been there for me. And but
Brothers, sisters?
I have 2 older brothers. One's in the Navy, and he's on deployment, so that's kind of nerve-wracking. And then the other one is at school at a university in California, so they're both gone. And I'm kind of close with my mom and go over there and visit her all the time and stuff like that. And they still keep in touch and things like that, but they're obviously not around as much.
So, do you know if either of them have had anything like what you're coping with?
I think that not the brother that's in the Navy, because they wouldn't allow him in with anything like that. But I think the one in California mentioned that he had been diagnosed with something like generalized something like with anxiety, like he just was worried about a lot of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. I mean, we talk sometimes, but not super often. So, but I think I remember him saying something like that. And then he's on medication for it.
Okay.
So,
I should have asked this before, but did they give you any medication at the hospital?
no.
Okay.
Nope.
Right. So, how about mom and anxiety?
I think that, I mean, she's always seemed like a real worrier, but hasn't been any sort of, she's never seen anybody for it or anything. She's one of those kind of catastrophic thinkers that's always like, what happens if this happens? And then, then you'll lose your car, then you won't have a job, and then you'll be a bum, and then, it's kind of like that all the time with her, just a constant run it into the ground. I learned at an early age not to tell her things that I thought might be at all dangerous seeming, because she wouldn't let me do them.
Gets up in arms and
I'd just do them and not tell her.
Yeah, interesting. So you protect her a little bit from things that would make her anxious. And so do you mind if I ask you about your drug and alcohol history a little?
Sure. I guess, I really used to like smoking pot a lot. I quit probably 8 months ago when the first year of pharmacy, I was able to kind of do it without really studying or being that concerned about getting buckled down. But now it's getting harder, so I really felt like I needed to stop. But I've been smoking pot pretty much since I was 11 or 12. I started with one of my older brothers, and I really liked it because it mellowed me out. I was laid back, and so
How long ago? What's the last time?
7 months ago, I would say.
So you just kind of stopped cold turkey?
Yeah, I just was like, this is not helpful for me right now, and I don't need to do this anymore. But my boyfriend kept smoking, and that, like I said, is part of
those problems.
And I mean, me being in the area that I'm going into, I really can't have somebody with pot sitting in my house smoking. If they got if you got busted, then my career is basically down the toilet. So I don't know if that's something I want to be connected to for the rest of my life. And at this point, we've been together off and on for 4 years, and it's not something, I mean, I feel like either I need to be done or we need to do something. So
it's kind of a point of stress right now, or a point of concern. Okay, so I'm wondering about other drugs or caffeine, those kinds of substances in your life
right now. I drink quite a bit of caffeine, probably. Well, it depends on what's going on, because if it's like a time when an exam's coming up, I end up drinking a crap load of it. Like I'll drink a couple pots to cram for a test and stay up most of the night. On a normal basis, I probably 3-4 cups of coffee in the morning, and then maybe a soda in the afternoon.
Okay. Are you drinking the kind of heavily caffeinated sodas or energy drinks?
No, I don't really go for those. They make me kind of crazy feeling, but but mostly like definitely caffeinated though, like Mountain Dew. I like Mountain Dew quite a bit, or Pepsi, Coke, those kind of things. But
all right. Any problems with the law in your history?
I did get a couple of minor possessions for alcohol when I was younger, and then I got a possession of marijuana also, and paraphernalia when I was younger. So
all right. One thing I like to ask people too is, what are you doing to take care of yourself?
Well, it's kind of hard when you work all the time and also are a student and have kind of a crazy relationship. But I've tried to start working out lately. I've been swimming some at the university pool. I've really gotten to like that. I never really had done that before. So that's something that I've kind of liked. Just in the last couple of months, I've started doing that. Kind of since this started, I was like, I need to maybe try to do something that's going to slow this roll a little bit.
So you are doing a little swimming and other things
pretty much just hanging out with friends. Although now I've kind of worried, if we go somewhere that's got a lot of people, like that concert was out with friends.
Right.
So I've kind of curtailed some of my social engagements just because I'm worried about freaking out, and then what are my friends going to think? And then, I don't know, I don't want to be weird.
So it's starting to kind of affect your friendships and social life, your work and school life a little bit. So it's kind of bleeding out into some places that make it difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is, like I said, part of the reason that I
Here you are.
bucked up and
That's right.
came to counseling.
Yeah.
Rita, you did a nice job of exploring Michelle's personal history. One of the things that I might say is that there are many different ways to explore personal history. And one of the things I've found really useful is to do an early memory, or sometimes in my work with young adults and adolescents, I will kind of jointly draw a family tree with them, sort of like an Adlerian family constellation or just a basic genogram. And doing that collaboratively to explore history seems to be a pretty effective way to go back into the past and identify some issues or themes that the client has faced.
I do think working with the client to understand the family in some way, whether it's a family tree or genogram, helps a lot. I was trying to help Michelle take a look at the possibility of other family members having problems coping with anxiety or panic. And of course, I also wanted to convey to her that I saw her as coping with anxiety rather than being victimized by it or struggling with it.
And you really made a nice flow from the past back to the present, which is a key part of the intake interview. Every intake interview is unique and selective in that you focus a little bit on slightly different content here and there and emphasize different things. But most intakes include the coverage of at least these three main general areas. The first of which is the identification and exploration of the client's chief complaint. That's kind of the first general area.
Right, and then of course, personal history and information related to that.
Right, and many ways to get that information, and sometimes many areas within the personal history. And finally, there's a transition back to a review of the client's current functioning. How is the client doing now?
Right.
Each of these areas can be expanded upon or minimized. For example, depending on your setting and your client's presenting problem, it might be important to gather specific information about the client's family history, or maybe military history, or maybe drug and alcohol history.
Yeah, the purpose of the intake, the goals, the theoretical orientation, the resources, the length of time that you have, these all can influence what the interviewer focuses on and what amount of time you have to deal with it.
Right, you know, Rita, you focused on the relevant historical and current coping issues that Michelle had, and I think you did a really nice job of that. I especially was glad that you focused on her caffeine use, which can trigger panic, and also focusing on self-care and some of the medical issues. Just really important and relevant pieces of the interview with Michelle.
Right. You know, it was interesting. There was a part of the tape we didn't show, but Michelle starts making a connection between her stopping the use of pot, which she'd used since she was 11 or 12, and the onset of those panic symptoms. So the client herself was starting to make connections that might end up being very important.
Which is something that can happen in a good intake interview because it provides the client with opportunities to reflect.
Right. So in this next section, we'll watch as the interview shifts toward case formulation, homework, and instilling the hope for change, making sure we take full advantage of that placebo effect. Well, let me do a little summary of what I've heard, and then maybe we can talk about some plans for our next sessions together.
All right.
And if you don't mind, I might even give you a little bit of homework.
Okay. Do you think this is something that people get better from, or?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm kind of worried about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, the good news is that actually the problem that you brought in today is one of those that shows really good results.
Oh, good, because
So,
I don't
yeah.
like it at all, and it really scares me quite a bit. So.
Yeah. So that's kind of the good news. The bad news, of course, is that anything like this requires some work and some time and understanding, and it doesn't go away magically.
Okay.
You already tried that.
Yeah, ignoring it didn't
Ignoring,
work. Yeah.
denying, yeah. But I think there's a really good chance that we can make a big difference in this, and you know, it's certainly worth a try.
Yeah,
So.
can't be any worse than it was before. Yeah, well, I mean, I can just you know, the way that I am avoiding things already now, like going out with friends, and like even when I have to go to big classes, I'm kind of like, you know, I sit on the edges of things and at the back, and sometimes I can't hear as well. So I think that I'm worried. Like I've seen those shows of those shut-in people that stay in their house and never leave, and that scares me. And I'm not by any means to that point, but I just worry if it's getting worse and worse that things could get worse, and then I could end up with a grocery delivery, and that's the only people that talk to me. So
yeah, or you're sitting in the car at Walmart like a homeless person.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So
right. So does this remind you of anybody that we've talked about today?
not really.
That's a trick question.
Oh.
You told me your mom
Oh,
catastrophizes.
Oh. Wow, I'm surprised I didn't make that connection.
It's funny how we ignore our mothers sometimes.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, and just like totally space it out after
Right.
a while. But she does leave the house, so that I guess was the part that. But yeah, I don't want to end up like my mom either. That would be terrible. I mean, she's very nice.
Well, yeah, but that tendency to be able to take one difficult life event and go,
yeah,
this is going to lead to this.
It's gonna blow up
this is going to lead to this, and then I'll be homeless
and
shut in, and I won't get a suntan anymore. And
yeah, I guess that's where I was going with that. It sounds exactly like her. I've become my mother.
No, you haven't. No.
Great.
But it's good to, we learn a lot from our parents and their coping styles, and one coping style is to face right into it, a tough potential reality, and say, if I don't do something about this, it could go there. So it's not a bad or good thing. It's just one of the ways you've learned to deal with things. And the good outcome of that is it brought you here because you kind of looked down that road and said, I think I don't want to go there. So here you are.
Rita, I really liked the way you made the connection between Michelle's tendency to do a little catastrophizing in her thinking with what she had identified herself before as her mom's tendency to do the same thing. Right. You also wove in something that was very smooth, and that is suggesting to Michelle that maybe the catastrophizing was not very much pathology. And so I think by doing that, you kind of give her an opportunity to choose to work on it or not.
Right, yeah. I think it kind of led to a little bit of an insight, which I think sometimes motivates people. When you have an insight into the way you are and a way you might want to change, you actually might have a little motivation to do things like homework. So we did have a homework assignment, as you saw, and then we had summary and closure, and we had a plan to get back together, including permission for her to call the clinic earlier. Because when you are dealing with panic attacks, sometimes you need that reassurance that you can make contact earlier.